Now, Minister of Finance, can you come?
Your Excellency, let me thank everyone for the questions and even the comments. And I'm particularly happy to some of them who have helped me answer the questions, some questions. First, I would like to state the following, even as I go into specific questions. That number one, the issue of state budgets and determination of the scales for payment is a constitutional issue. And I want to remind the governors that we do not be selective in applying the constitutional provisions. The reason why the states have their executive and legislature is for that purpose. The question is, how much do you get from the national government to add to what you constitutionally are mandated to generate? You have clear types of taxes, and you have different process for budgeting. So what happened is that the national government, as one of the governors stated, and that is true, is to argue with us how much we transfer to you to add to that, and then now you decide how you allocate resources, with the exception of some departments such as education and health that have direct transfers through the line ministries. So just like we've been debating about collection of taxes, you rightly argue on some type of taxes that you actually, the constitution, the national constitution, mandates you to collect that type of tax. So this is the same thing when it comes to your own budgeting. So your argument should be, what we are giving you is small. And then we all sit and say, okay, this is our national pot. This is what we are giving you at state, and this is what is remaining for the national government obligations. That is a conversation, as in the Ministry of Finance and the national government is ready to do, because we all come from the state. So that's one clarification I want to make, because it addresses a number of issues here. The second is that report that you have been referring to. And I understand it was brought before you by the Right Honorable Deputy Speaker. I do not know, and this is a matter of procedure, that report was a report within Parliament during the budget process. And it was extracted only from the outturn table without explanation. And that is why there are questions as to what does this overspending for some of the ministries and the state and administrative areas are concerned. There is a budget execution report which is presented by the National Ministry of Finance to Parliament as a matter of requirement, for which it has not yet been discussed, and the explanation as to how this overspending happens. You will agree with me that the top culprit on that list is the Ministry of Finance itself. And I believe you can trust that if Ministry of Finance itself can put itself on top, then there is some evidence. And I want to say, the Right Honorable Deputy Speaker and the Right Honorable Speaker here, whether we could discuss the details of that execution report in this forum and not first in Parliament, which is a requirement of the law. But I will still share example to clear the worries, because we were waiting to discuss in Parliament the details of this. The third clarification I want to make is the understanding that when we report overspending, it may mean the full annual budget has been released to you and then you have exceeded that. That is not the case. Even if it was 1 month that was transferred, the report, the execution report, is supposed to confirm whether it is the budgeted amount that was released or less or more for that month. And that question has been answered successfully by one of the state ministers, and that is from a BA administrative area, that for those who have received transfer for 2 months, for 3 months, that overspending, it is only for that period, not the entire period. I think that clarification is important. And not to come back to it, is that if your budget, and I said in my presentation that before the increment of 400%, state were receiving average of 2.5 billion. But after, it is 18 billion. So suppose we have released to you 1 month, and instead of giving you 2.5, we gave you 18, then you have exceeded your expenditure by far. That's what that report simply means. Number two, in the detail, we will give detail for each state of how much and where did that money go, if it is not the salaries. And let me also add, when I come now to generally refer to how the overspending happened for both national and subnational levels. For the nationals, you would talk of unbudgeted spending but necessary. And I'll give example. For example, the Ministry of Finance would take responsibility for any unbudgeted spending because it would not, and I will take, for example, the NTC, the National Transition Committee for the Peace Agreement. This is not a legal body in the sense of, and does not have the, it does not have the budget court. So whatever that is disbursed to NTC, for example, is reported under the Ministry of Finance. This is just an example, and there are many, including the peace talks that were not budgeted, including the current one. It started with Rome initiative, then later transformed to Maini. I'm just giving you examples. So there were committees formed, and all of you refer to it after the parliament approved the 400% for the national government. And then where committees formed, these committees had budgets, and there was huge expenditure which would be explained in the report. That is another example. There were IDs, they call them financial IDs, that were procured, the machinery and all that is required to be able to now manage the payroll. That again took a lot of money in the approved budget. And I can go on and on. And so for the state, there are two major sources. Actually, one is the increment of salaries, and which was approved by the committee, and that you double or you increase 4 times your monthly allocation on salaries, for example, or all the grants. The other one are advances. It is also a matter of law that states are allowed to if there is money. For those who have requested and did not get, it would be that if the National Ministry of Finance doesn't have money, then your advance may not be executed. But when there is money, we advance. And I want to disclose here 6 states out of 10 states and 2 administrative areas out of 3 had taken advances. And this is recorded as an expenditure because you took it in advance. And to my Governor General Lobong and his minister, in fact, you are the leading one. You took almost 2 billion in advance. So even if you did not get any other, this one is one of the causes why you have overspent. So if you only got a transfer for 1 month or 2 months, we add the advance that you took, and that would increase your spending. So we are happy to help you out from your legislative assembly that you did not steal the money. We will help to explain to them, but we gave you an advance. So the total of 8 state and administrative areas took advances. And in any money that we pay, we are required to report it. I want to single out the Ministry of Interior because my colleague here.
Are advances loans? Are they loans or they're money?
Yeah, we loans would be if we agree to be repaid, but advance is going to be reduced from the
budget.
From the budget.
Okay.
So they are advances. The Ministry of Interior, as an example, and the minister here was talking about that the report may not be accurate, but then she went ahead also to try to help me and say and say that maybe the inflation or the 400% increment could have caused. It is true. She has a lot of generals, and we will just talk an example of before the 400% for example, increment. Maybe an officer, let's say an NCO was earning 8,000 pounds. So if you do the math, that the 8,000 times 4, it should have been 32. But now that NCO is getting 85,000. This is something we also need to admit here, that as what was approved was 400, actually what is being paid is more than 400%. It is something that is being investigated and see what happened. Minister of Wildlife Conservation and Tourism had actually confirmed that also. That is the case in his forces, the wildlife servicemen. So, but that is not the only one. She has prisons and police and fire brigade that we have also data of how much money they spend. So we could not just wake up and say you have overspent. We have evidence to that. And so when the tabling and the discussion of the budget execution report in Parliament happens, those details will be provided. There was a question about a gentleman was very upset that I said we have been consistently releasing salaries for the financial year 2023-2024. Maybe that's English. What I said, over the years, states and administrative areas were getting average of 2.5. The word consistent referred to what you were getting, and that has been jumped as a matter of increment of 400% to 18 billion instead of 2, an average of. So the consistent did not mean a release of salaries as for the entire period. Sales tax adjustment, it is always released with the transfers. Maybe my team will come out with maybe a table or a schedule that would separate from the block grants that is sent, say that you know how much is from sales tax adjustment and how much is from the conditional grant. But let me remind you, the State Minister of Finance, how much is that in actual terms, in terms of that sales tax? Because the understanding is once you collect sales tax in your jurisdiction, you are supposed to be reimbursed by a percentage from what you have collected. Do we really have a lot of money that one of you referred to that it can sustain your operations? It's your right to know this amount and to be sent even if it is £1. But I would remind you not to think that it is a lot of money. Because how much, if you look at the overall performance of taxes, and particularly the sales tax, it is negligible. It is not a lot of money. Actually, you get, maybe Central Equatoria would get a little bit higher than others because of the volume of business in this state. But for the rest, it is a very little money compared to the other type of taxes, such as PIT, for example. Your Excellency, I want to maybe again reiterate the issue of 400%. That the National Assembly, the Transitional National Assembly, legislate for the national. And so this 400% increment was not for the states. You can only ask for increment of the transfers. And you will use transfer to decide whether you want to match the salary at the national level with the state level. It is not, this is a matter of law. Two, even some state ministers or government officials are earning more than the national ministers, and I can use Central Equatoria, which is your right. It's not a problem. So long you have enough resources, you have been increasing salaries for yourself, which is within your constitutional mandate, and you have salary. The national government did not complain and say you are part of us, we should be getting the same amount. So I think this needs to be clarified, that, and the states, for example, that are oil producing, if there is 2% was big enough and they use that money to pay themselves well, and at the same time being accountable to their people by keeping enough for development, there will be no problem. And the responsibility for a sustainable wage bill is within, it is the mandate of the state government. The national government may advise if you were going to create an unsustainable wage bill for yourself by increasing salaries and neglecting development, or also not in line with the revenues that you are generating. So some of the questions here, I think I addressed them because they were around, if you have not received the full year transfers, then how do you end up being reported to have spent? I think that has been addressed. It doesn't matter, even if it's 1 month, we would still calculate the spending, whether it is within the budget, under the budget, or over the budget. The issue of when do we clear the salary arrears, this is a very legitimate question. But I want to remind us as leaders, because if we talk as if we don't know why the salaries are not being paid, we know our economy and the public revenue, for that matter, has been largely from one single source, and that is oil. And when the Dar blend that contributes 70% of our oil revenue was disrupted as a result of the conflict in Sudan, we lost close to 80% of our revenues to the national budget. And I think it would be unfair for you as leaders not to know that we have been struggling. We are only dependent on the tax revenues, which contribute less than 20% to our national budget. So I think the question we should be discussing here is, now that the oil resumption is delayed, what can we do to ensure that happens? Second is, what other alternative do we have that if it doesn't come, how do we operate? So we'll be talking about austerity measures and say we must live then within the little we have. I thought those are the discussions we should be having, but not us saying, when are you going to clear the arrears? When we know we don't have the money. And for the purposes, this forum is about intergovernmental relations, and as leaders, I think when we are asking legitimate, and it is your right as you represent the people, they asked you, you are going to Juba, please let us know when you come back, when is our money being paid? It's their right, both morally and legally, that they are employees of the government, they have discharged their duties, and they are supposed to get paid for it. That they would ask. But I expect you, with this knowledge that how we get our money, and it is in trouble now, that you can help explain and not to create a wedge between the subnational and national to look like we have the money and we are not complying with our legal obligation to transfer to the states. That is my request, Your Excellency, and it is not only limited to the state, even national here. We some of our leaders do not want to acknowledge that we have a problem as far as the oil export disruption is concerned. And it applies to all form of arrears, because until when we have the revenues back, we will be struggling. But then what is our message? We are doing our part to make sure that the resumption happen as soon as possible, because our people are suffering. And that is when you would put me to task if I have that money and I don't far the money as it should be. PIT, I did not get the specific question, but let me try, Your Excellency. If it's about the collection of PIT, it has been an area of disagreement between the national and the state government, because in the Constitution, it is not so clear like other types of taxes. Other type of taxes have been clarified what should be collected at the national, at the state, and the county level. The state and the national both appear to have that mandate. And so the debate, Your Excellency, has been which one can be classified as a national PIT and which one is supposed to be a state PIT. And with that, I want to say the majority of our states are actually collecting PIT. Even if when we want to centralize the PIT and we pay them just like the sales tax adjustment. There had been arrangement even before I take office, before I took the office, that a certain percentage, say 30%, should be given to the states from which the national collects the PIT. We have not had agreements over that, but we think we are still engaging. In fact, with the help of development partners, UNDP had facilitated a number of meetings between the state and the national levels on this issue. We also think, Your Excellency, with the constitution-making process, this will be clarified. Because at the end of the day, we do understand why the states are really in need of some of these taxes. If we had money and we regularly disburse their transfers as budgeted, I think there would be no problem for a state to allow the national government to collect even their own taxes, because we would be more efficient than them, like other countries have done. We could actually even collect for them their own taxes and release to them. Because as one country, as we say, But then the taxes that are shared with the transparency, and there was a proposal to establish what is known as one-stop shop, where you will have the National Revenue Authority, the South Sudan Revenue Authority official and the state taxing together for transparency purposes, such that at the end of the collection period, each state will know how much was collected from their state, and then the percentage, the sharing formula is applied, and transparently everybody is happy that their percentage is the legitimate one. So that we want to do, Your Excellency, but for now, we have not been very harsh on them, because we do understand that there are some states, if they actually don't collect, they will shut, because if they take 3 months, 4 months without a transfer coming, and they are a government to operate, there's a problem. So that's why we've not been hard. So if a question was different with regard to the PIT, Your Excellency, then I may not have addressed it well. But this is what I know about PIT.
Any response to that? Is the explanation clear?
Thank you. Thank you.
I get from him that yes, there may be national PIT and state PIT. You can collect the state if you have the capacity, but they want to centralize it so that you get a percentage of what is collected generally in the PIT. So you're better off collecting yours. Preferably, because PIT, the one you are talking about is the PIT from NGOs, isn't it? There are NGOs which are registered nationally. Now their employees, the PIT will be collected by the national government. There are state NGOs that you register. You collect their PIT. They recruit people on the ground. Those they recruit at the state level, you collect their PIT. Those who are recruited at the state, at the national level, they collect their PIT.
There are 3 types, Your Excellency, of PIT, the major one.
Yes.
We need to clarify, yes. This one we call the NGOs, we call it private PIT, and there is public PIT. Public is for all the officials, the public sector employees at the state level. They also pay PIT. That we don't touch. 2, there are some under the private PIT, which is the NGOs and the companies, and even rental income. All that comes as. Now, we also agree that which one are national and which one are state. So in actual fact, we have been trying a very few areas where we disagree. But in most cases, we know which PIT is. Like for a company or a community-based organization with having an office in Pivot administrative area and is paying rental, that rental income, which is part of PIT, doesn't come to us. Okay? The employees of the NGOs, whether registered nationally, but position were created and advertised at the local level, and they take, we don't take. But where a company or an NGO is registered here in Juba at the National Registry of Companies, and they advertise a position nationally, and someone is hired and sent to Arab State, that is a national, because they are being paid from here and recruited from national. So it is only a few areas that we don't agree, but we have not been very hard, and I think the governors can attest to that. There were issues around liquidity, Your Excellency, and the issue of why
small notes.
Yes, why the Ministry of Finance is announcing a release of salaries. I want to agree with the Minister of Finance that in fact we should not have been announcing, but it is also not a secret that the salaries has been released. Is not a secret. The reason has been because of the long wait, sometime where people don't receive their salary. So it is that some information and an accurate information for that matter is communicated, whether it is 1 month's salary or it is more than that. But going forward, I want to agree with you that this is a business as usual. But then if you wait for months, you may need some information that something is on the way coming. But we will address that. The issue of liquidity is a preserve of the Bank of South Sudan or commercial banks. What happened, and you as state ministers for finance can also attest to this. We receive tax revenues or proceeds from sale of crude oil, for example, through accounts. We don't get cash. And all over in the past, it is the same process. When we receive money in our accounts, we then process the payroll and send it to the government bank, which is the Bank of South Sudan. The government bank will now then credit the institution's account, whether they are state or ministries. Some, they take their money straight from the Bank of South Sudan. Others, another transfer will be done from the Bank of South Sudan accounts to commercial bank. So it is not the Ministry of Finance that gets cash either in form of a sale of crude or collection, and then we set aside that cash and send only electronic money. Again, I want to request your understanding on that. I do not want to explain. I have asked the same question, but I am aware. As part of being responsible leaders, we know a few challenges around liquidity. Number one, many of our people cash salaries. So if the total wage bill is 50 billion, for example, maybe 40 billion is withdrawn physically. There is no economy anywhere in the world can support that, because it brings two issues. You have to print, because there is this small amount, 1,000, 3,000, for millions of people who are keeping it under the bed. That money amounts to something. So you would find that not all the money that is supposed to be circulating in the economy is in the bank at any one time. Part of it would be in the hands of the people. And so you either create a situation where you print money equivalent to the salaries you want to pay every time you are paying salary. You can imagine what that will do to our economy. So the reason why banking was introduced is for you, if you are being paid $1 million, you don't have to walk to the bank. All of us here receiving millions in our account, 1 million pound, which is today $200 equivalent. We all receive it in our account. We all walk to the bank and withdraw the same amount physically, all of that. You will bring down banks, because the banking is a concept based on, if I have $1 million, it will be in my account. If I want to pay you with the 50,000, I'll pay through the account. I remain with the 950 in my account. If I want to get some small for, small spending, I'll withdraw 50. Then 900 will be in my account. If I want, somebody else want to, that's the banking. Now our culture here, and this is all South Sudan, and in fact, the culprit are us. The leaders and the businessmen who have huge bank account and they don't want to leave money in the banks. They would rather withdraw all of it and go and keep it in the houses or in the shops, leaving others with nothing. Maybe somebody was going to get 100,000, but you have taken $1 billion. This is what happened. So we have an economy to manage here. And the two things we are addressing to help our economy is by stopping the deficit, which I said. There is no, by over what I call monetary financing, we have stopped overdraft. And we have also stopped printing more than that is required by our economy. There's a formula we use, say that in every, like now we have 4.2 trillion budget. There is a percentage of how much money we should print in the next 12 months. When it becomes more than that, then you are damaging the economy. That's why you have a soaring inflation. So the same behavior where everybody runs to the bank whenever they get paid and withdraw money cash is what is forcing the commercial bank and the Bank of South Sudan to struggle to provide enough cash to everybody. So we are saying let us accept the bank account. All the government employees and everybody else should be paid through bank accounts. And when you have it in your account, do not withdraw all of it. If you want to pay me, please pay me through my account.
Through a check.
Through checks. And this is all of us are complying in other countries we go to. Why is it that we behave when we are outside our country and when in our country we don't want to do the right thing?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you have made yourself clear. What is that?
Now, yes, legitimate question. We also know we are not saying 100% people will not be withdrawing cash. We know areas without bank and we will create, it's our work to encourage the opening of banks, the fintechs. Today, there is what we call Momo and M-Gurush. I can send you now 5 million pounds in your account and you can send it to the other person. Anything you buy up to 5 million at any one point you can do it. And there is a limit and we can encourage if those who are familiar with the MTN mobile money in Uganda or M-Pesa in Kenya, you would attest to that. The limit can be enhanced and you don't have to, it is even a security threat to you. But for GPA, for example, the Greater Pibor and some security units that are outside the banking, the towns and banking, these people can be paid through mobile banking, or we can take a bank there, or we can allow the delivery of actual cash. But that would be small if those of us in the city accept. In fact, by law, if you owe me 1 million and I go to you now and demand for you to pay me, you write a check for me and I don't have a bank account, I cannot go to court and refuse the check and tell you, because I don't have a bank account today, you have not paid me. You cannot go to any court and I cannot go to any court and say this person has refused to pay me because you are paid. That is when I will understand the importance of banking and I'll walk to the bank. I have a check here. How do I get it? They will tell me, bring your jinsia, open an account, deposit this, you will be accessing your money. That is what we all need to do. Your Excellency, the last one. And this is something that has not been asked, but it is linked to the need for banking and stopping the huge cash circulation is the issue of borrowing 100%. In this economy, and I have remembered Governor of Western Equatoria asking who is in control of our economy. So I will answer that. I'm sorry, I was forgetting it. But let me link it to this, Your Excellency, that if you were to open bank accounts and you operate and you are in need of short-term financing, like what we call advance, you would be able to do that with your bank because your bank knows you have an account with them and your income does come through that account. You will have already created a credit history. And that is what the bank uses to lend money. Now, people are suffering here, Your Excellency. They walk to individual, ask for a certain amount, and they will be told 100%. Where does that, what kind of a business can you do in 1 month to return 100,000 with another 100,000? Something illegal, and it is not right for our country. Why don't we, there are banks here who have been rendered, they are not doing their main business, which is lending. The banks, because people don't bank with them and they don't borrow from them. And it would be cheaper for you today. The interest rate, the benchmark interest rate in our country is 15%, Your Excellency. But look, people are paying 100% when they are in need of money and they want to borrow from people. Something illegal, and it is not fair. Now, finally, on the issue of who own the economy, His Excellency, the first Vice President said, we own the economy is us. It is the people and the activities we do and the resources we have. So for sure, we control our economy. But maybe the debate would be about what percentage. Suppose we have non-South Sudanese. How much of the GDP that belongs to others? But when it comes to legal terms, any business that is legally registered becomes a South Sudanese. So it's still ours. So there is no discrimination between a trader who is a South Sudanese and a trader who is a foreigner but registered in accordance with our laws. That person must be treated equally as the South Sudanese here. So we are in control of our economy. But what we want to say here, do our people engage in essential businesses that keeps money in our economy? That is the question we should ask governor, that we are dependent on our friends and people who have chosen to do business in South Sudan. But our own people are not engaging in meaningful business. The government wants to do everything to ensure that we take over the ownership of our economy. Your Excellency, First Vice President, if there is no more question that I might have skipped, then I would beg to stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you.